All right, hello everybody, welcome back to Dr. Dave Regis's openings course, which is a free ebook that the good Dr. Regis made, but he's been kind enough to allow me to turn it into videos for new players, junior players, and even more experienced players. And up till now, we have looked at, very quickly, we've looked at playing the Scotch game. So far we're looking at E4, E5 openings. We've looked at the Scotch game, which is this, bishop eyeing here and white often sacrificing a pawn for quick development. And we've seen that it's pretty dangerous for black if they're careless, but if they know what they're doing and they play sensible moves, they'll be fine. But it's good. It's a good solid opening that gives both sides some chances. And we've also looked at the Evans Gambit. So again, very similar, distract the bishop from the middle of the board, play c3 and then d4. And the same applies, perfectly good for both sides. But black just has to be pretty careful that they don't make a mistake because they will get squished. But if black is careful, then they can hold on to the extra pawn and get an all right game. So fine. Now, there's other alternatives, of course, and that's what we're going to look at in the next 10 games, 5 in this video, 5 in the next. And we're going to look at the Moeller Attack of the Giuoco Piano, or variations thereof. And that comes from this set of moves. Now, instead of Gambit here, well, we will see actually white try that at some point in this selection of games, because you can. But what we're looking at here is now c3, the more traditional move, and that gives support to d4. Okay, fine. Well, let's get straight into our game. So the first one, excuse me, knight to f6, d4 as predicted, takes, bishop to b4 check. Let's just take the analysis lines off for the time being till we need them. Now, the best thing for white to do here is to play knight to c3 and block. And black, it's pretty scary stuff going for knight e4 because you're neglecting to castle. The computer will say this is the best move, and it is, but at the same time, it's a little bit a little risky, but knight takes is fine, castles. And now the better move here is to play bishop takes knight, which we'll see in some other games. But in this game, black goes for knight takes, pawn takes, and then bishop takes, threatening the rook. And I assume that the player with the black pieces thinks they're doing all right here because they're up by 2 pawns. But what they've got to understand is they're not castled. It's going to take at least 2 moves to get this bishop out. And if this rook, isn't in the game, then it doesn't really matter too much if white loses that one, as long as they win quickly. And under attack by a fly, lovely. And that's kind of what happens in this game. So white completely ignores this and just continues to develop an attack. Queen to b3. So we've seen this, we've seen this theme before of going for this weak f7 square with the battery of these 2 pieces. And in our example game, black carries on, just greedily grabbing material. And you can see from the analysis bar what the computer thinks of that. So bishop takes f7. Now, if you play the king to here, rook to e1, and you're just going to die. Just don't do it. Yeah, it's no good. King here, you probably got bishop there winning the queen. If you were to go here, my guess is that bishop f4 or bishop a3. I'm not going to look in detail, but one of them is going to be pretty horrible. Okay, so the correct move is king f8, which is fine. And bishop g5, we attack the queen. And that also opens up a line to the bishop. So we are attacking the queen. So we, look at this. I mean, yeah, all right, white's a rook down, but 1, 2, 3, soon to be 4, 5 pieces attacking a pretty much defenseless black king. This is the kind of mess black can get into if they're careful. So bishop g5. Now black puts something in the way to defend their queen, not unreasonably. And white just brings another piece into the attack because why wouldn't you? And you can see this is very, very good for white. It's the computer's saying +3 and a bit, even though white's a whole rook behind. Now, black in our game here decides to get greedy. And white plays bishop g6. Now, the threat of bishop g6 is queen here, which is just checkmate. And it's that's not a good arrow because it's defended by multiple pieces. So, well, what on earth can black do? Well, black tries d5. to block the queen from getting up there. So putting a piece in the way. But there's so many ways to finish this, I would think. Dr. Regis gives us this one. Queen here, bishop to f5, because you've got to do something, so why not? Bishop takes, so we recover some of the material. Bishop takes, and now bishop to e6 is check, which is unpleasant. Black can't go to either of these two squares because queen f7 is their mate. So the only thing that you can actually do at this point is block with the bishop. Well, you could block with the knight, but I mean, block with the knight and you just walk into queen takes knight and then bishop takes queen. So yeah, so bishop f6 is played and bishop takes. Now, again, if you play pawn takes, you run into queen takes check, king here, queen here, mate, because the bishop's protecting the square. So you can't actually take it. So black has a go at creating a runaway square for the king by going king across. Queen to, sorry, I've missed a move here. Yeah, I do apologize. Yeah, I was going to say that doesn't look right. Yeah, he has to do that first. Yeah, queen to b8. Bishop to g5 is check. How? Well, it's the discovered attack from the queen. King goes to e8, queen to f7, and there's the runaway square. That was what I was talking about a minute ago, a slight slip where the queen's moved. We've got a runaway square, but it did us precisely no good because bishop takes is mate. Ouch, 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 ouch. So that's an example of the kind of mess you can get into as black if you are not careful. But I do want to, again, just like with the other two gambits, throw out the fact that at this point, the game is completely reasonably balanced. It's saying tiny advantage to black, but I mean, again, below a certain level and minus 0.4 advantage is nothing. It's basically level. And even if you play knight takes, which is what happens in the game, it's still perfectly playable for both sides. Okay, it's just as we go through the game that black begins to get themselves into a bit of a pickle by being too greedy. And there's the problem. You can't be taking this rook. You need to get your king into safety. And at this point, white's already pretty comfortable. So, okay, there's example one. Here's our second one coming up. Similar sort of thing. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop to c4, bishop to c5. And instead of c3 this time, so we don't get that in this game, we get castles, which is obviously absolutely fine. Knight f6 is fine. Let's just turn the lines off for a minute. So it's a bit distracting till we need it. And white sacks a pawn. So we're back to this business of white sacrificing a pawn to try to make black waste time. And again, perfectly okay. Perfectly level position, nothing wrong with it for either side until one side miscalculates, and then we get some fireworks. So takes, absolutely fine. And what white will do now that we've seen before is start generating a initiative in chess, which is where we make moves that attack enemy pieces and create threats, because the initiative means reducing the enemy's possible moves. So by attacking their pieces, they can only make moves that defend those pieces. I'm sure I could have explained that better, but the point is the initiative is moves that create threats. That's the better way to describe it. And that's exactly what happens. So e5 is attacking the knight. So black has to deal with the knight, or can be clever about it and create their own threat. So in fact, in the game, black answers the threat to the knight with a threat to the bishop. And this is still 0.00. Computer's saying perfectly level. But it's just, you might find as a human that you'd rather have the white pieces because black's king is stuck in the middle. But let's see. Takes. So far, so good. Rook e1 check. Uh-oh, king stuck in the middle. Okay, well, bishop blocks. Let's develop a piece and block. Why not? Knight to g5. Okay, well, that's interesting. So we're attacking now here with two pieces. We might be able to do something with pawn takes and then queen h5. It's all, okay, a little bit ropey. But I have to say at the moment, it's white that's not really that well developed with these two pieces down here, and the computer says, yeah, black's okay. So let's find out where black goes wrong in all of this. Queen to d5. Interesting idea. I guess black maybe thinks they can run away and castle this side and get out of this annoying pin. And the position's still level. What this does do, though, is give white quite a cool tactic. Knight to c3. And this is really, really cool, because if pawn takes, queen takes queen, and you can't play bishop takes. Look, I'm going to try, but it's not going to let me because the bishop's pinned. So, yeah, that's quite a devious move from white, knight c3. So, in fact, now we've done it again. White's made another move that attacks an enemy piece. So the queen's got to go somewhere. Go back to d8, it's going to look a bit stupid. So queen to f5, and now the knight does have to move. So knight c to e4, putting pressure here. Okay, fine. And bishop f8 is okay. Why? Well, it's defending this pawn. Okay, fair enough. You can't argue with the logic of that one. And then white plays this unexpected move. Knight takes f7, which is still okay for both sides. Notice the bar, it's still okay, but it's like typical of these sort of wild positions you can get in these openings. So if you play bishop takes here, you get squashed because knight here is double check. So the king moves wherever the king's going to go, one of these two squares, and then knight takes queen is obviously going to win the game. So in fact, in this position, you pretty much have to play king takes. And now we've got the other knight to come in to give check. And things are getting a little bit nasty here. Now, king to g8 is not particularly pretty. I should show you, you can't really go here because rook takes bishop is brutal. The rook's defended by the knight and the knight's defended by the bishop, and white's piece is just, yeah, ouch. So you kind of have to go back. You can't go back there because you just run into this disaster again. So king to g8 is played, and white goes for g4. So more complications, and the computer still says dead level. I've got to show you this one as well. Now, if queen takes pawn, looks like you're winning a pawn. Look at me, I'm winning a pawn. Well, you're not, because look at the bar. Queen takes queen, bishop takes queen, and f7's mate. Oh, so that's not very nice. So in fact, queen g4, you can't take the pawn. So black plays queen takes f6. Okay. But that's not great either, because look at the bar, rook takes, and we've still got this same thing. These pieces are so beautifully coordinated. The queen's got to go somewhere. Well, we'll go there. In comes the white queen, now once again with initiative, because it's created the threat of a checkmate. So queen to d7. And now we've just got, I'm glad I haven't got the analysis on, because the next move for white is just an absolute beauty to win the game in the next 2 or 3 moves. You can force black to resign. So if you want to hit pause and have a go at finding the right next move for white, feel free. And I'm going to carry on with the video in 3, 2, 1, and on we go. And the best move for white is this ridiculous move, rook to e7. What? Well, if bishop takes, queen here is mate. Remember, there's the knight supporting that square. So bishop takes is not going to do it. If queen takes, we have queen here. And the only way you can prolong the game is queen to either of these two squares, D6, E6 or F7. And in either case, queen takes is still just mate on the diagonal. So, ouch. Yeah. But I think it's just really important to note that even right up to here, the game is still completely level. Sharp stuff. When we talk about sharp chess, this is what we mean. Games like this with all these tactical possibilities where everything could just turn on one move. Look at that. One move that looks like it wins a pawn and the bar just flies up to the top and says mate in 9. It's some scary stuff. So, okay, that's 2 of our 10 games that we've seen. Now, this is the second time I've actually recorded this. The first time I got about halfway through the game I'm about to do, and then a, shall we say, popular home entertainment device whose name begins with A, for some reason decided that maybe I'd said her name and started playing a radio station, which is really helpful. So let's hope that that doesn't happen again this time. So, okay, e4, e5, knight f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, bishop to c5, and we're back to c3. So we're back to this one. Knight to f6, d4, Let's keep your eye on the bar. It's all perfectly normal. Slight advantage to white, just what you'd expect from an opening. Oh, by the way, I should say knight takes is not great for black. I'll quickly put the lines up. Knight takes here is not great, and it very rarely is, partly here because you lose the bishop. But in other lines, it's not very good either, even later in the game because of the open line. Sorry, the open line that you create. But anyway, just if anyone was wondering, knight takes pawn, not good. This just isn't going to do it. And I wouldn't normally put that into a video, but as I say, as I'm aiming this at new players, maybe somebody was wondering, so fine. Yeah, so d4, ed4, much the best move. cd4, bishop checks, knight to c3, knight takes e4. So we've seen this before. White castles. And obviously, here we go. We've got this interesting stuff coming up. And this time, black plays the correct way. If you're going to take on c3, the better way of the two to do it is with the bishop. Oh, I need to turn the lines back off. Okay, so what can we say? Well, white pawn takes. No, not a bit of it. We're going to do this instead. So instead of taking the bishop, we're just going to keep expanding in the center, d5. Computer says tiny advantage black, but both sides are still well in the game. Okay, black in this game decides to save the bishop. He can't save the bishop and the knight. So in this game, black says, right, I'm keeping my bishop, bishop to f6. Okay, fine. White doesn't take the knight. White instead, again, just attacks another piece. This knight is now pinned to the king. So rook to e1 is played, but please note, still perfectly level. It's complicated, but it's level. And black knows that one of these knights has got to go, so knight to e7. Okay, fine. And white finally takes their piece back. Okay, so we've got a level position. The only big difference here, the computer's saying it's basically level. Black's got an extra pawn, but look at the, white's far more developed. All of the pieces are ready to go and the king's safe. So more than enough compensation for a pawn, unless it's computer v computer. But for human beings, this is pretty sharp. So white's next move, d6. Sorry, I've missed black's move. I do apologize. I forgot to put castles on the board. Sorry. Yeah. So now white's next move, d6. What's this all about? Well, it might give us a chance at some point to put the queen on this square, but not yet. But more interestingly, it blocks black from developing this pawn forward. So if you play pawn takes pawn, which happens in the game, this one that I'm flashing here never gets to move and your bishop's stuck, potentially stuck. So d6 is the move that's played. It sort of crunches the black pawn formation. Takes happens, and white just takes anyway. So all right, fine. Knight to f5. We need to move the queen so that we can move this pawn and get the bishop developed. So knight to f5, and the queen comes back to d5. So this is a bit, at the minute there's plenty of defense, but just watch this space. d6, as you would, because A, it develops the bishop, and B, it protects this knight, which the queen was hitting. So fine. Totally understandable. Knight to g5. What? What's going on here? Oh, it's attacking this. Well, okay, great. But isn't this just losing? Isn't there two black pieces attacking this knight and only one piece defending? Oh, well, okay. White must have fallen for something here. So black decides that they can go ahead and take the knight. Please note, still level. Bishop takes, still reasonably level, although computer now likes white a little bit. Bishop takes, threatening the queen. Still, tiny advantage to white, but basically about level. And watch the bar. Oh, black's a full piece up here. In fact, a full piece and a pawn, and is about to get mated in two. This is what happens in these openings. The slightest bit of carelessness and one side or the other will get squished. If you want to stop the video for a sec, hit pause and see if you can find why it's mating two. Feel free. Otherwise, I'll be carrying on in 3, 2, 1. And the correct move is this beauty. What? Well, if rook takes, then rook here is mate, because the rook is pinned and cannot get back to f8. It can't do it. So there's no escape. And if you simply move the king to the corner, well, queen takes rook obviously is just a back rank mate. But please note that right up to here, even here, although positionally white has a nice advantage and the computer's saying +1, that's still not terminal by any stretch. There's still plenty of play left in this position. What's the computer says? Just get the queen out of dodge, queen to c7. So you're defending this square. And if white was to play queen takes knight, I'll just put this on the board. It looks like you've undefended the knight. Oh, sorry, I'm being stupid because of the bishop defending. I did have something to say on this one. I can't remember what it was. Who cares? The point is black's still in the game. Okay. So this, and by the way, look at me just going queen takes knight without thinking about it. That's a typical example of what you get in these openings is people just don't notice simple tactics. Okay, so I'm going to put the final position back on the board because I think it's quite cool. Look at that. Absolutely beautiful. And yeah, I'm not going to re-record this. I'm going to leave my little queen blunder there in just as an example of how absolutely everyone can make mistakes in these openings. It's really dangerous stuff. So 2 more games to go through today. We're back onto the Moeller attack. So Giuoco Piano Moeller attack. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5. This is again all normal. And c3, we know what's coming. Knight to f6, d4, ed4, cd4, bishop b4, knight c3, knight e4, and castles. And once again in this game, excuse me, got the lines hidden. The lines. Black plays bishop takes c3, which is fine. White plays d5, which is fine. And unlike the last game, instead of bishop f6, this time black decides to save the knight. Knight to e5. Pawn takes bishop. Okay. Knight takes c4. And queen here, which looks on the face of it like it's forking the knights. God knows what's going on with those arrows, but still. But that's not quite the case because the 2 knights can, of course, defend themselves. So knight cd6. And now what do we do as white? We're, not pretty on material. We do seem to be a piece down, but the computer actually still says it's level. Well, let's take here. Black hasn't castled, so this rook is in some danger. So we'll do that. There's 2 ways that black can defend from here. The first is just to put the rook to f8, which is perfectly okay. And the second, which comes up quite a lot in these openings, is to put the queen here and defend backwards. The queen itself is defended by the knight. And queen f6 is what's played in the game. Queen takes, knight takes. Notice the bar is still nice and level. Nothing dramatic is happening here. Rook to e1 check. Very nice. The black king hasn't castled. But now it's a question of going in the right direction. What should black play? Well, in our game, black goes here, and off goes the bar right up to the top. It's a horrible mistake because after bishop g5, this pin is just undefendable. What is going on here? Well, if you play knight here to block, rook takes knight, and you can't recapture because, as we said, the knight is pinned. Okay. If you go knight back to here, rook takes knight is still possible. Oh, okay. Well, that's kind of cool. It has to, if you go with the rook, you run into this. And you can't defend the rook again, so white just ends up playing bishop takes rook and is a piece up. And I think that's about it. Sorry, yes. And if you go with the king, well, if you go with the king, you're also going to get fairly summarily squished. I think it's going to be right. Why am I not using that? It's mate in 4 with rook e1. I turn it off when I need it and turn it on when I don't need it. King here, bishop to h6, king to g8. And this is rather a nice finishing move, rook e5, threatening the mate here. And there's actually not a thing you can do about it. The only way you can protect this square, which would be checkmate, is temporarily. You could try to put the knight here, but then you just get mated in that direction instead. So, yeah, once again, another example of absolutely everything is tickety right up to the point where one side makes a stupid mistake. And so king d8 is just unplayable. You actually have to put one of the knights in the way here. Knight f to e4, and you can see the bar stays in the middle and the game goes on. What will happen is white will take advantage of the fact that, oh, excuse me, that the knight is now, I don't know what I'm doing with these arrows, that they're not having it today, are they? That the knight is now pinned and will play knight d2. So 2 attackers, only 1 defender. And if black plays f5 to defend the knight, well, f3 anyway wins the knight. And remember, it can't move because of the pin. And then you've just got this perfectly level, if slightly messy position. So time after time, the same thing with this set of openings that Dr. Dave gives us, that they're perfectly okay for both sides, but just walking a tightrope, really walking a tightrope. You can just make one quick miscalculation and you are suddenly in all kinds of trouble. So one more game for today. And this came from Germany, Blumenstein Grime, from the year 2001, the German Championship. Don't know either of the players, so who knows if they're any good. We'll probably be able to work that out by looking at the play. Knight f3, knight c6, and bishop to c4, bishop to c5. So this is all stuff we should be expecting by now. Knight to f6, d4, e4, cd4, bishop checks, knight to c3. This is all completely known theory, book theory. Oh, d5. So this is a change. Now, in previous games, the other ones we've looked at, black has gone in for knight takes e4, which is, as we've seen, absolutely fine, but boy, can it be complicated. So in this one, black tries something else, d5. Well, ed5 is played, not unreasonably, although it does admittedly slightly block the white bishop, but okay, ed5. And then knight takes. And this is kind of cool because this is taking advantage of the fact that this knight is pinned. So you haven't really got 2 attackers here. And if bishop takes, then queen takes is actually probably perfectly okay for black. So knight takes d5. White castles, as you do, to get the king out of that pin. And then we have... we're missing a move actually on the transcript. Sorry, I was just looking at that going, we're missing a move. We're missing knight takes here, pawn takes, and then bishop here is a mistake. And Dr. Dave has put the comment, this is no time to stop and do some shopping. I'm not quite sure what he means, but it's a very similar situation to the other game where black's going to go grabbing this rook and it's just ridiculous. You just need to get your king safe. And you can see from the bar, I bet if I go back a move, yeah, there we go. So at this point, it's better for white, but it's not unmanageable. But after bishop takes, you're going to get squished. And here we go again, this same theme, attacking here. And bishop takes a1. Well, in for a penny, in for a pound. Bishop to this square is check. Of course, it's protected by the queen. We already know that going king here is probably going to get you into trouble because of the open line. So king to f8. But now there's another problem. Bishop a3. Do you remember this from the Evans Gambit? When we sacrifice the b2 pawn, sometimes the bishop can come out here. And ouch, that's not very nice. So what are we going to do? We've got to put something in the way. The only thing realistically we can put in the way, sorry, I haven't put the bishop on the square. Realistically, we can do is put the knight in the way. Okay. Now what? What do we do now? Well, let's put some more pressure on the pinned piece. So this knight is pinned. Basic chess theory says if a piece is pinned, hit it again. So all right, we'll attack it again. Ouch. What's black going to do? There's nothing here. And you can see from the bar, +8, nearly +9. This is over. So black just takes the pawn because might as well do something. Knight takes because why not? And bishop e6 because again, you're just toast here. Knight takes, black resigns. But really, it's just devastating. Now let's just go back a few moves because again, it's the same old thing. If you know what you're doing and you're careful, you'll be fine. But there's so many sharp tactics in this. So white has castled, and the computer already says if level-ish, but a bit of an advantage to white. +1 is a decent advantage to white. So possibly, Yeah, possibly we don't like d5. Computer's not a big fan of d5. In this position, it actually probably thinks you should take the knight on e4. Yeah, it wants you to go in for the complications anyway. Look, so what do you do? You have to go in for the complications. So knight takes e4, and then we've already seen some games that come from that. Wow, what a set of 5 games. Really complicated stuff coming from an opening that is perfectly good for both players. Nothing wrong with it, but boy, is it sharp. Lots of calculation, lots of mate threats, lots of forks and pins and tactics. Okay, we'll leave that for today, and I will come back another time with the next 5 games in this chapter of Dr. Dave Regis's fabulous book, and we'll get some more games in the Giuoco Piano and probably the Moeller Attack. Fab. Thanks for watching. See you later.